Ed and Mabel Lawrence were just like any ordinary retired couple, living a quiet life, enjoying their golden years. But everything changed the moment they stepped aboard the ocean liner, Serenity. What was supposed to be a short, celebratory cruise, after decades of hard work, quickly felt different. The ship was more than just a vacation. It was freedom, a release from mundane responsibilities, bills, and obligations. They didn't announce it, didn't make a scene. Ed and Mabel began thinking quietly, conspiratorially, about extending their stay. At first, it was only a few extra days, but soon that plan evolved. They started subtle, small maneuvers, switching cabins discreetly, blending with new passengers, learning the ship's rhythm so no one would notice. As other passengers disembarked at each port, Ed and Mabel stayed behind, slipping into the next wave of travelers without suspicion. Weeks became months, months became years, and the couple perfected a life of quiet invisibility. Their secret required planning. They moved like shadows, mimicking normal passenger behavior. They dined at different restaurants, attended shows sporadically, made casual friends only to vanish before attachments could form. Mabel would engage tourists in polite conversation about upcoming ports, while Ed feigned curiosity about their adventures. They laughed, smiled, blended seamlessly into every crowd, leaving no hint that they'd been aboard far longer than anyone else. Every day was calculated. They switched cabins every few weeks, moved their belongings carefully, and adjusted routines to avoid drawing attention. They were ghosts on the ship, quiet walks under starlit decks, tea in little-known cafes, reading in hidden corners. Even when familiar faces of the crew appeared, Ed and Mabel adjusted, attending fewer shows, changing eating patterns, and avoiding high-traffic areas. Their life aboard the Serenity became a delicate dance, a continuous balancing act between enjoying the freedom of the ship and staying unseen. Months passed. The couple had mastered the art of blending in. They became observers more than participants, learning the ebb and flow of the passengers around them. Yet the longer they stayed, the more improbable it seemed that they could continue undetected. It wasn't the passengers who threatened their secret, it was the crew. One day, a young laundry cleaner noticed something unusual. Clothes from Ed and Mabel's cabin kept appearing long after most passengers had left, mismatched with the usual turnover. She didn't suspect criminal activity, but she mentioned it casually to a colleague. Whispers spread, subtle at first, among the lower ranks of the ship. Waiters noticed that the same couple dined week after week, entertainment staff recognized their faces from different shows, and slowly, curiosity became suspicion. The crew began watching. They observed patterns, cabins, dining routines, deck visits. Eventually, an officer noticed something extraordinary. Ed and Mabel weren't on the passenger manifest. Their names didn't appear on recent boarding records, yet they continued to occupy a cabin. A quiet investigation began, connecting seemingly minor clues to the couple's prolonged presence. When Ed and Mabel were finally called into the captain's office, they were calm, almost as if expecting it. The captain and officers laid out the situation the crew had noticed their decade-long presence. The couple admitted the truth. What started as a brief extension had spiraled into 10 years, a life aboard the ship, a floating world without obligations, bills, or the burdens of land. The captain listened with disbelief and amusement. Ed and Mabel had exploited loopholes in the ship's system, staying unnoticed while living the life of any passenger's dream. He faced a difficult decision: remove them and make a public incident, or handle the situation quietly. After deliberation, he offered them a compromise: they could stay until the end of the current voyage. Then they would disembark. Ed and Mabel accepted, though their hearts sank. 10 years had passed. The ship had become their home. Their final weeks were filled with nostalgia, quiet moments on the decks under the moonlight, revisiting favorite spots, lingering over sunsets, savoring every meal, every corner of the Serenity. They had lived a life few could imagine, full of freedom, adventure, and the gentle rhythm of the ocean. The morning of disembarkation arrived like a cold awakening. The gangway under their feet felt unfamiliar after a decade floating on endless water. Ed and Mabel carried their luggage, hand in hand, hearts heavy yet full of memories. They had no clear plan for life on land, no anchor, no routine. The bustling noise of cars, the chatter of people, even the smell of streets, it was all overwhelming. The world had changed during their absence. Technology had advanced, neighborhoods shifted, friends moved away. Life on land felt foreign, slow, almost suffocating compared to the rhythm of the ocean. For weeks, they wandered through coastal towns, searching for a place to settle. Every location felt too still, too static, lacking the boundless freedom of the Serenity. They tried reconnecting with friends, but after 10 years, relationships had grown distant. Some friends were gone, some had changed, and some simply could not comprehend the decade-long escape Ed and Mabel had experienced. Yet, the call of the ocean remained. Even on land, their hearts longed for the breeze, the smell of salt, the constant movement of the horizon. Every marina they passed, every ship leaving port, tugged at them like a magnet. Finally, a year later, they booked a short cruise on the Serenity, returning to the decks that had been their sanctuary. The ship hadn't changed much, but to Ed and Mabel it was a portal to a forgotten life. As they walked its familiar corridors, memories flooded back secret routines, quiet corners, late-night reading sessions, and tea sipped under stars. Passengers, unaware of their story, watched curiously as Ed and Mabel moved like seasoned travelers, exuding a quiet confidence. Crew members, some who had never met them before, greeted them politely, oblivious to the legends that surrounded the couple. Ed and Mabel shared stories, but never the full truth. Some secrets were too extraordinary to be revealed. As the years went on, they continued shorter voyages, savoring the freedom the sea offered without the strain of decade-long invisibility. Longer cruises became exhausting, and shorter, frequent trips allowed them to maintain their sense of adventure. They had grown older, wiser, and more content to enjoy life at a slower pace, but the thrill of the Serenity never faded. One day, during a return voyage, the captain surprised them with a visit to his quarters. Drinks in hand, laughter filling the small room, they reminisced about old adventures, the careful dances to avoid detection, the quiet walks under moonlit decks, and the thrill of living unnoticed. "You two made this ship part of your story," he said, smiling. They laughed, remembering how carefully they had avoided attention, how they had mastered invisibility. Fellow travelers often asked for advice on long-term cruising. Ed and Mabel shared tips cautiously, omitting the details of their secret decade-long residency. They had learned the value of blending in, of living quietly yet fully. Their story became an unspoken legend aboard the Serenity, whispered among passengers and crew alike, a tale of freedom, courage, and the unusual life of two people who dared to escape the ordinary. Age gradually reminded them of reality. Long voyages became tiring, and they opted for shorter trips, savoring the ocean's embrace without overextending themselves. But their love for adventure never waned. They embarked on one final grand voyage, a world cruise spanning continents, celebrating a life full of freedom, love, and shared experiences. Every port brought nostalgia and joy, a reflection of the decade they had spent quietly living their dream. As the world cruise came to an end, they stood on the deck, watching the horizon. The sea had been their home, their escape, their sanctuary. They knew it was time to slow down, to embrace a simpler life, yet the ocean's rhythm remained part of their hearts. Settling in a small coastal town, they found peace in a quiet cottage by the water. Though it could never replace the serenity, the ocean breeze and distant waves kept their spirits alive. Ed and Mabel's story spread among travelers, becoming legendary. Former crew members occasionally visited, sharing laughter and memories of the couple's secret life. Their tale was one of adventure, love, and freedom, a life lived entirely on their own terms. Even in the quiet of their coastal home, walks along the shore and the rhythm of daily life carried echoes of the ship they had once called home. One evening, as the sun set over the water, Mabel turned to Ed with a soft smile. "We did it," she whispered. Ed squeezed her hand, understanding completely. They had lived a life few could imagine, unbound, secretive, yet rich with freedom and discovery. Their decade aboard the Serenity had ended, but its legacy, the memories, the stories, the courage to live differently would remain forever.